Hello, Instagram. Hi, everybody. Just gonna wait a little bit for everyone to join. Hi. I'm so excited to introduce everybody to Allie. Once she joins, I'll bring her on. One second. Hi, everybody. Hi, Kathy. Hi, everyone. Just waiting one moment. Oh, there's Allie. Awesome. Okay. Here we go.
Hey.
There you are. Hi.
How are you?
Working. It's amazing.
I know we're like technological wizards. It's so sad, but this is hard for us, or for me.
I'm just going to pin a comment really quick, but if anyone has questions as we do our little convo for Allie or me, feel free to just ask in the comments, and if I catch them, we'll do a little Q&A at the end. Let's see.
You know what I realize I need? I need like a stand for my phone. Send suggestions on good phone stands for Instagram.
Oh, yeah. That is a good thing to have. It's really hard to hold the phone up.
I know. I'm sure it'll be like my arm workout for the day.
Okay. Pinning this. Cool. Oh man, I'm just like so impressed that I know how to do this. Okay.
I'm really impressed too. I mean, you've impressed me a lot in the month we've been working together, but this might top it
all. Yeah, thank you all for joining. We'll give it a couple minutes till we get going if there's any last people joining. But if you do have to leave early, we're gonna have all of these Instagram live conversations live on our page, so you can check back in there once we repost it. But yeah, I'm super excited. I'm Christine Koppes. I'm the curator and director of public programs, if you don't know me yet. And I'm super excited to talk to Allie Gass, our new executive director and chief curator. So yeah, I mean, we've just been having some really great conversations, and I feel like it's so important to like let our public and our Instagram in on that. Like we've been doing a lot during shelter in place, including hiring Allie. Which is just wild.
It is crazy.
Yeah.
But so, it gives us such good time to just like talk and like dream and talk about like everything facing the art world, the ICA. And so I'm excited that we're going to kind of like take what we've been talking about public for a minute.
Yeah. And we'll talk more about it, but this is the first in a series that we're calling PSA, Practice Safe Art Combos. So you can kind of meet us back every week, usually Fridays at noon, but switch it up every so often to hear from different artists and different conversations and performances. So this will be the first of many. It's really exciting.
Great.
Okay, so I want to get into just asking Allie some questions and introduce her to you all. So yeah, first, Allie, could you kind of give us some background on your career and coming to the ICA?
I definitely can. I just want to say thank you to everybody joining and everybody, if you're watching later. I'm super excited to kind of be here in our first public moment. So I am, I think, like 5 weeks into my new job as executive director at the ICA. It is a crazy time to start a job and to move my family across the country, but the Bay Area is our home, so it just feels great to be back. So yes, I will give you a little bit of bio. So basically, let's see, I fell in love with art history in college. That's like the critical, like, origin story part. And I decided that I would go on and, you know, work towards a PhD in the history of art. And I was focused a lot on like late 19th century art. It started getting more and more contemporary as I was studying, because I got mostly really excited about art and art history as like my way of understanding history, frankly, like economic history, political history, global history. And then more and more, even like my way of beginning to piece together like things that are happening in the world around me as the artists I was studying and working with got more and more contemporary. Slowly I realized that what I love about art and art history is the way that it really can kind of offer perspectives and new modes of thinking about the world. And that for me, museums and art institutions became like a much more inviting platform to do this work in the sense that it's like accessible to the broadest possible public in an ideal way, right? It's accessible to the broadest possible public. So while I was in graduate school, I got a job offer to help curate an exhibition at the Jewish Museum in New York, and it kind of all took off from there. I was like, no academia for me. I want to be a curator. So my very first like really important job was as an assistant curator in the painting and sculpture department at SF MoMA, where I was for like 7.5 years. And I really, you know, learned an enormous amount about how museums work, how exhibitions work. And the best part of that job in many ways for me, there were two things that I worked on there. It was the New Work series, which still exists, which is like kind of the platform for emerging or mid-career artists or artists who haven't really had an institutional exhibition on the West Coast. And I really loved the projects I did there and the way that I got to work with artists and kind of give them new opportunities. And also the Sika Art Awards, which was like my real kind of in getting like enmeshed in the Bay Area art scene. So I went from there to help open the Broad Art Museum in East Lansing, Michigan, which is crazy, totally crazy. So if you don't know, it's a Zaha Hadid building on the campus of Michigan State University, funded in large part by Eli and Edie Broad. And that was kind of like where it was like from like big, huge museum to like tiny, basically startup museum, like a 5-person staff. And I built, you know, while I was there, it built to like a 26-person staff. And I think that's where I kind of understood the like advantages for me of working in kind of a smaller, more nimble institution, a place dedicated to contemporary art. But I came back and I was at Stanford for a couple of years at the Cantor. And then for the last 3 years, I was the director of the Smart Museum at the University of Chicago, which was a really exciting moment. And we sort of spent the time like really committing to thinking about the diversity of the program, the diversity of the pipeline for arts professionals, ways to engage a kind of broader community, both on the south side of Chicago and beyond, which was a really exciting moment to really think about what are the stories the Smart had been telling and how can we make that much more reflective of the community around us. At the end of the day, the Bay Area is my home, my family's home. So when I was thinking about like what I wanted to do coming back home basically and working with the art world that I love and the colleagues that I love, it was just pretty clear to me that I love just contemporary institutions. I love opportunities to like work with artists and make big dreams come true, but also have a platform where you can really reflect the world that's changing around you. So you can really sort of take a left turn and say, hey, here's what's happening. And here are artists who are talking about it in a really important way. And we have the flexibility to make a move and just do a project or an exhibition or run public programs that feel relevant and impactful at a moment when the world feels in crisis. So I was super excited to find you and find the rest of the team. And I just feel like it's endless possibilities for us right now.
Right. Yeah. And I just like you having all that experience is just really exciting for the ICA. I'm so looking forward to see where we go in the future. It is trash day today, so I am sorry if you're hearing all of that. But yeah,
it's like a metaphor for the world around us. It's like a trash world right now. Yeah.
Lovely. But yeah, and you talked a little bit about it, but I just was curious if you could just talk a little bit about what drew you to the San Jose ICA and maybe what is exciting to you about working in San Jose specifically.
Yeah, no, that's really important. So as I said, one of the things that drew me to Chicago was the like deeply diverse city and neighborhood in Hyde Park in Chicago. And I think as I thought about San Jose, and I'm really just beginning to get to know it, but what drew me there was the reality that it is an incredibly diverse city. It's a city that has economic diversity, racial diversity, sort of many people who are from other places. And it's an opportunity to think about what would be a really meaningful way to engage that community through contemporary art practice, right? Because that's our medium, that's our mission. So how can we think about making sure that we're building a program that doesn't make people feel sort of, oh, contemporary art's not for me, it's not part of my life, it's not relevant, but it sort of gives us this incredible platform. It also feels like it's a city that, you know, a lot is happening there. There's a lot of development going on. There's sort of economic change potentially on the horizon as companies may come in. And how can we be part of sustaining a culture that exists there, of making sure it is for everyone? The fact that the ICA is free was really important to me.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, we're also, because we'll get into this a little bit, but given the pandemic and the world, I think you and I are in a very fortunate position in the sense that we are among very few of our colleagues who can kind of feel like we're small enough that we're relatively okay for the moment, and we can keep our staff intact, and we can kind of be excited about creating new projects. And I think we're really lucky, and that was a huge part also because I was taking a job in the middle of a pandemic. The fact that the ICA, you know, obviously there are big challenges, but the fact that fundamentally it's been such a well-run institution, and it's, you know, got incredibly supportive board members. And so you and I can kind of say, hey, let's think about how we can take a next step and be relevant, but we're not facing as much difficulty as I think other institutions are. So, I mean, there's endless ways to answer that question, but you know, it just felt incredibly exciting.
San Jose is just, it's so fun. And I think I feel very lucky to have worked at the ICA for the past 2 years. And I think we're just at this really incredible moment going forward. I'm just excited to, especially with this, taking this time to really like think about what we can do in the future and how we can change our program and really build on what we've already done has been really exciting.
I would also say, like, I think it's important to say that, you know, there are amazing arts organizations in San Jose that I've been kind of watching from afar. Of course, the ICA, but like, you know, the museums on our street, Makla and Quilt and Textile Museum and the San Jose Museum of Art and many other things that we could go on and name. But I'm realizing that it has all the makings of of a place that we can really add to a conversation, be kind of amongst this great constellation, but we can be this place that is just committed to contemporary art, temporary exhibitions and projects, commissioning artists. That's what we do. And how can we kind of like work within this like pretty thriving and exciting arts community, and help kind of build visibility and more support for all those institutions too.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's really hard to be an artist in the Bay Area, and then like especially during a pandemic. And so it's so important that we keep these institutions that are also going to really support our local, and you talked about your work with emerging artists, and that is such a big part of the ICA. And so definitely like continuing that going forward. So I also wanted to talk, like you said, we've been taking a break and really like dreaming big about what the ICA is, but a lot of our conversation has been, what is the role of an arts institution, a visual arts institution during COVID? Like, we can't be open to the public, so what can we provide our community? So I was hoping you could talk a little bit about this program that when you came in, we talked a lot about and built this new digital and also like outdoor visual arts, but that we're calling PSA, Practice Safe Art.
Yeah, absolutely. So I mean, I think to like, even just to back up, because it's such an important question, right? You and I and many others who work in museums and in the arts have really dedicated our career to the belief that seeing art in person is a deeply humanistic experience. It's an unparalleled experience, right? So seeing art virtually, I would argue, can be amazing, can be exciting. And right now it's mostly what we have to do. but I think it's really challenging the very foundation of what a museum or a contemporary art institution is. So the chance to be a part of that conversation at the ICA is really exciting because, as we sort of said, we're nimble, we have this deep foundation of supporting artists, but what do we do? So I think we're starting now realizing that it's going to be a while before we can open our doors to the public in any real way. And until people will choose, I think, to feel safe coming to see art. So I think it's an opportunity not just to figure out what can the ICA do, but exactly as you phrased it, what is the role of a contemporary arts organization when you just can't gather together in physical space, stand before an art object, be in the midst of an exhibition? So what are we? And I think it gets at the fundamental question of kind of, what is the role of a museum in the 21st century, right? A place
Right.
where like so much is already being experienced virtually, where you can see what's going on in any museum around the world, you know, at the click of a button. And I think this is something we've talked about a lot, right? What is a museum even? You know, I think there's the sort of long-term definition of a place that collects objects and presents objects and displays them and conserves them. And then that's really shifted as contemporary Kunsthallen or non-collecting institutions have really joined the ranks of important museums around the world. And the definition becomes much more about being a place that, through the platform of artistic practice and art objects and exhibition projects, is a place that is for education, for conversation, for social justice, in the sense that museums can kind of take a position in the world and say, hey, we really rely on artists to point us in the direction of progress. We rely on ourselves and our community members to point us in the direction of progress. And how can we use our medium of giving a platform to artists and working with artists to forge that progress? And so I think that can sort of be done digitally in a very powerful way. And I think I've really enjoyed those conversations that you and I have been having. Of course, it doesn't replace the idea that eventually we all want to go back, and we all will go back to seeing art live and being in public programs together live. But I think for the moment, thinking about how can we model that sort of excellence in the museum of the 21st century in being a place to forge progress through arts and issues around arts? How can we, you know, identify health crises, political crises, things like that, and partner with artists and members of our community to take a stand and do programs like this or other kinds of programs that really help people process what's going on around them while being inspired, hopefully, by like artistic practice, working at the highest level and stuff like that. So yeah, so from that is born our idea of the Practice Safe Art series, which we see as like both a virtual series in a bunch of different ways. So these Friday talks that you're doing that are the PSA Convos, I think are going to be really important. And then our Talking Art series, which will be kind of like more in-depth panels and lectures and stuff like that. And then people can stay tuned for what's coming soon, which is our announcement of some actual live art projects, specifically around the facade of the ICA that we're pretty excited about. So I know you could talk a little more kind of about how we frame, because you've really been the driver behind the whole PSA series.
Yeah. Well, I think what you said of like modeling the experience of a museum is like so important, because it's really, at least to me, not about just like a virtual experience of art, like not just like looking at art on a website or these like virtual viewing rooms, but really more of like that conversation, that like thinking space, which is really what we're trying to do with the PSA program, which has just been really nice to like just kind of, because I feel like there's this response to just do everything and get into gear of like how we can put everything online. And I really like that we've kind of taken a step back and like thought it through and make sure that we're like really giving our audience something that hopefully they want to hear and see in this time. So yeah, our PSA Convos, which are going to be these Instagram live conversations or performances, artist demos, studio tours every week on our ICA Instagram, is really kind of built from this this idea we had pre-COVID of this celebration of our 40th anniversary. We're looking at like some key artists in the ICA's past 40 years and bringing them back to have a conversation or to do an art performance. So we're kind of letting that live on Instagram Live, which is going to be really interesting and exciting and just a little bit more open to people all over who follow us. So yeah, something that I also want to make sure that I mention is that it's was made possible by a grant from the Santa Clara's Historical Grant Program. It's a brand new grant that we're so excited to get. And something that's like so key about this is we're able to pay artists for their time, for their performances, their conversations, and make sure that they're having some income during this like really hard time. So that is, I mean, supporting artists all the time, paying them all the time is important, and happy that we can do that right now, even though we're not open to the public. So just keep following our Instagram. You can sign up for a newsletter on our website to hear what's coming next. But next Friday at 3 p.m. we'll have artist Sean Hibma-Cronin doing a studio tour, which I'm really excited about. So yeah, for now, really focusing on the looking back at the history of the ICA, what's happening now. We do have some shows installed, but then also talking about the future of museums and the ICA in general. So a lot of good.
No, I think it's right, because it's a really, it's an interesting moment specifically for the ICA, right? Because with, you know, Kathy Kimball ran the ICA for the last 20 years and really built it into what it is. And it's because of her, of course, that we have this foundation that gives us the kind of privilege of being able to dream big and look to the future. But it was already going to be a year of big transition for the ICA. It was already going to be a moment where Kathy was retiring, where it's the 40th anniversary, a moment to like really think about this great legacy and how working together, you and I and the rest of the team and the board and community members can build, you know, the next 20 years of the ICA. And I think the fact that we're virtual now gives us this, sort of forces us to think about, okay, what is the role of an ICA in San Jose, in the Bay Area, well beyond, and how can we kind of take these conversations and serve, I hope, a broader arts community in terms of thinking about, okay, how can a contemporary art institution help right now? How can we help process all of these ideas? But also maybe this is a way for us to even think further beyond COVID of how we continue this kind of ICA of the 21st century as a place that is, yes, deeply about offering artists opportunities, displaying art, discussing art, looking at art, but also having this platform for talking about the most critical issues facing the art world and the world, but using artists. So I really like that we're starting this way in some ways. I mean, if we have to, and it's tough, but I think it's going to be really exciting. I'm also super excited about this idea of sort of celebrating the 40th anniversary bit by bit live over the course of the year, and using that to kind of help inform both us and everyone who's watching kind of how are we taking that history, building on it, and moving on to the future. So
yeah. And these kind of like shorter conversations will overlap with these like more in-depth, longer panel lecture series that we do with Talking Art. So it's not meant to be like, you know, super deep and involved, but we do want to get to those issues and bring them into our Talking Art series too.
Yeah, totally.
So yeah, another like, you know, super important big topic I wanted to bring up in this conversation, which we've been having a lot of talks about, you know, within staff and you and me, but I think it's really important to address this publicly and just like kind of keep this conversation going and let people join in on it. And so basically I want to talk about, there's been this like very much needed moment in the art world addressing systemic racism within institutions and art museums. And we kind of see that with SF MoMA specifically. If you aren't aware, I highly recommend following the Instagram accounts of ex-SF MoMA, No Neutral Alliance, and then more broadly, there's an Instagram called Change the Museum, which is doing like amazing work to highlight all of these issues. And I know you talked a little bit about this, but in your career, you've worked a lot on addressing diversity, equity, and inclusion. So I really wanted to hear about like how you're feeling in this moment and talk a little bit about what the ICA has been doing to really acknowledge this issue and what we can do to better reflect the diverse community of San Jose.
Yeah. I mean, it's an incredibly important topic, and it's very sad in many ways what it took to make it a conversation that's being had much more broadly, I think, than it had been happening. So I think sort of stepping over that for a second, just to say, you know, it is true that the art world, as many other industries, has been built through all sorts of elements of systemic racism that have allowed certain members of society to have the opportunity to study art, to be artists, to go to school, to survive on a career that doesn't always pay well, especially at the beginning, to work in the arts. That's something that I and many great colleagues have been focused on, of course, for a while, in terms of thinking, first, how do you begin to change the pipeline of arts professionals, right? How do you build an opportunity system for people for whom it just might not be a career that seems plausible, possible, relevant, impactful, all of that. And so those are some of the things we are certainly talking about in the past. You know, you and I are talking about creating opportunities for paid internships, largely looking at people for whom those opportunities might not have existed otherwise. And that feels incredibly important for thinking about our own awareness of curatorial voice and leadership perspective, right? The backgrounds we come from, and therefore the perspectives we bring as we create content. It feels very important that we acknowledge that and begin to bring in partners and inform ourselves and work with others to make sure that as content is created at the ICA, it's being created with the most equitable thought partners in mind. The same is true of our leadership in terms of people who support the ICA. And this idea, I think, of living our values, right? That's what we've been talking about a lot. What are our values personally? What are our values for an institution? And making sure that we understand those so clearly that as we both build opportunities for staff, invite people to partner with us philanthropically, invite people to partner with us sort of as thought partners and philosophically, invite artists to come and work with us and give their voice to the public through the ICA, that we are checking our boxes kind of against our values consistently, so that those values for the world we want to live in and want to support and the meaning we want to create are a kind of metric system against which we say, okay, how are we moving forward? And it's not easy work, and we don't certainly have the answers at all. If we did, then we could solve many problems in the world. But I think the Black Lives Matter crisis, what's happening in the art world around us, serves as a vital reminder for everyone that the art world is deeply part of the rest of the world, and that I've long thought and believed that, you know, visual practice of every kind reflects and perpetuates the ideals and norms of the world we live in. And if we want to see change, we have to do that through our program, through ourselves, through kind of every process of running an institution. It is a moment of real crisis, and it's something that I think, as we think about moving forward with our exhibitions program, our public programs, our internship and all programs and all of that, I think it's work we are committed to doing and will continue to be talking about, right? I think what feels important is that we're saying it out loud all the time, every day, with our board, with ourselves, with our staff, with artists. You know, let's check ourselves and check us, please, because we realize that we're coming from a very specific position, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think that's, you know, it's important to, you know, talk about it on a public platform like our Instagram. And it'll be a part of larger conversations on our Talking Arts and within our exhibitions. And we just gotta, stay accountable and keep talking about it. But I am very excited about, even within these first just couple months, having you on board, the conversations we're having. And it just feels like we're coming to this new place that I'm really excited about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I think, and so I'm really excited. So I can sort of tease a little bit our really exciting facade project that is something that we are really thinking about at the moment that we're closed. How can we create artwork for the public to see in every, you know, see for free, see in passing? How can we partner with artists that can have potentially opportunities to push the boundaries of their career, to push the boundaries of their practice? And so we're creating a kind of mural program that we are inviting some artists to participate in, which will be a real kind of transformation of the facade of the ICA using the windows and a new mural surface that we're going to make, something that I hope will also just sort of say, hey, we're here on the street with all these other great arts institutions, and give a reason to gather and see work live and in person. That also feels incredibly important. So I'm super, super excited about that, and say stay tuned for more details to come on that.
Yeah, that's going to be really exciting. I'm excited to share that with the world. So kind of on that, like the facade project is definitely something that's going to come up soon, but I just wanted to hear a little bit more and let our audience hear what's in store for the future of the ICA. What are we really talking about and looking at for when we can reopen, which I'm hoping will be, you know, maybe winter, maybe spring, summer. I don't know.
I know we're not saying a date because we just don't know, just as we don't know, you know, when my kids are going back to school or any of our kids are going back to school, or when we can be together actually in physical space. So, you know, here's of course what we're thinking about. We're thinking about deepening and extending the great experience that I think many people have had with the ICA, right? Working with artists from all around the world to commission new work, create installations that feel like they could only have happened that way at the ICA. I think we're going to work on striking a really strong balance between committing to artists and galleries of the Bay Area and partnering with them and offering kind of a lens into what's happening and practicing there. And then I think also we will be looking at artists from far-flung places to come and make work, to be in conversation with our community that's right at hand, right? So that we can kind of strike this balance between being a place that is deeply dedicated and supportive of the Bay Area arts community, and also offering a way for that community to engage really globally and be in conversation. So I'm excited about that. I think, again, we're going to look at creating an exhibitions program that is a really good balance between living these values and talking about socially and politically relevant things, but at the same time, of course, committing to inspiration through art practice, innovation through art practice, all of that. You know, I'm seeing some questions about how political we intend to be, and the answer is we can't help but be political, right? All of us are living in a world where I think everything we do reflects some response to the conditions around us. I will say that I have always felt that, you know, provocation for the sake of provocation is not necessarily an interesting thing, but using artistic practice to help forge conversations is incredibly important. And that doesn't mean that things aren't full of visual pleasure or full of extraordinary technique or deeply important and extending a legacy of art history. So I think that's a really important thing to say as we kind of articulate our commitment, and I think we would be irresponsible not to articulate our commitment to being responsive and reflective of the world around us, but also that, you know, we are a contemporary arts institution, and we do it through that and through all the elements of artistic practice that I think we deem to be important. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Yeah. We want to be an accessible place that where you walk in and it's not overwhelming. It's something you're like interested and inspired, and just want to learn more. And it's not something that's going to be completely like, oh, this isn't for me.
Right. And this has been a thing for me throughout my career, right? Contemporary art has felt often to many people in the broadest public, to many people of every public, that it isn't for them, right? If you haven't been studying it for 20 years, like I have, like, it's not for me, I don't get it, it's too conceptual, I don't understand it. And I think the fact that the ICA is free begins to break that barrier down, but I think further we see it as our responsibility to make it feel relevant and accessible. So you don't come into a contemporary arts space and say, ooh, I don't know how to respond, I don't get it, maybe I don't understand it, I feel kind of uncomfortable. It's really all about being welcoming and offering a way in, and having the public and our visitors and our audience have the freedom to say, I don't get it, I don't like it, and giving us the freedom to say, well, here's why we like it and what we are excited about it. And, you know, we can disagree maybe about what we like or don't like, but the fact that we've been able to have a conversation and everybody feels comfortable having that conversation, that's the goal, I think, fundamentally.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I feel like we've been able to really like with our public programming, our First Fridays, kind of create activities and programs that are just fun. Like, so we're fun too. It doesn't have to all be like
Right.
weird. Yeah,
It's
it
hard
can,
in this moment, I think, to like give yourself the sort of self-care to say, I also need to just feel some pleasure. The world is so complicated and
yeah,
difficult right now. And sometimes, I've had lots of conversations with people who are like, oh, I feel guilty about posting, happy pictures on Instagram, or like frivolity of life pictures. And you have to sort of say, I want to be a responsible member of society. I want to forge changes where changes need to be made. But I also recognize that there's a need for pleasure and delight. And that I think the ICA has this incredible ability to offer that, right? To be a place for important conversation and be a place for leisure and fun, and have, so there's this balance between that is just human, between silliness and seriousness, that I think is what we're trying to approximate in our program and in our partnerships.
yeah, absolutely. We at the ICA, we don't want to take ourselves too seriously,
Right.
and I think that's what's drawn a lot of people to us, and something I really love about the ICA, and that we're open to like having conversations with the people who walk through our door. I mean, anyone can kind of walk in and talk to a curator and learn more about the show. Our tours are free, our admission's free. It's a really amazing place, and also just something that I think is someone asked a question about um, how do we know what if our programs are really what the community wants to see? And I think that's a really great question, not just like what we think they want.
Of course.
And my kind of response to that is that we're really focused on collaboration with other organizations, and I think that's really the key to broadening our audience is bringing in other organizations and letting them kind of take over and do programs and learn a lot from them and their communities. And not just with these other organizations, but just with our public. Like we are there on the floor at our programs, ready to talk to you and hear what you like about the ICA or what you would want to see here.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah.
I think that's really right. And I think, look, the answer is this is something every museum and arts institution figures out, right? We've been talking a great deal about who are our audiences, right? Because there are kind of multiple audiences that will make up the visitorship of the ICA, and we will absolutely be trying to make sure that our program is rhythmic enough, sort of diverse enough in every way, that it's kind of hitting interest and importance and relevance to kind of all of those different audiences, from school kids in San Jose to artists that are visiting from afar to whoever really. And I think, there's all kinds of things we can do about market research and data analytics, and maybe we'll do some of that. But I think we're also going to kind of there are metrics for examining success, right? Like feedback from our public in every way, thinking about what visitorship shows get, or projects get, or Instagram live convos get, and all of this stuff. And that's all stuff we'll work on. But I would say that the IC is small enough to kind of weave its way through feedback from audiences. We're never going to appeal to everybody all the time, but we're certainly trying to sort of understand who we're serving and how to bring our own expertise about what we think is important for people to see about contemporary practice and conversations we want people to be having, and balance that and kind of make changes based on feedback. So we are delighted to have feedback. And I sort of love this possibility that our turn to virtual is bringing, to kind of in real time get feedback too. I hadn't really thought about that as much, but it's not something you usually get. You and I are in positions where we're often really behind the scenes organizing exhibitions, and then the public experiences them, and it's usually the frontline staff that engages with them. And the IC is small enough so that's not always the case, but at the same time, something like this gives that opportunity for conversation and dialogue.
Absolutely. So if you have questions for us, now is the time. Put them in the box. We'll hang out for a few more minutes, but if anyone has anything you want to hear from Allie or me about the ICA, now is a good time.
Yeah, and otherwise I just say, stay tuned. We're super excited about the PSA, the Practice Safe Art program we're going to be rolling out. There's going to be all kinds of conversations with artists, studio visits. We're definitely also thinking about our members. You know, one of the things that I know a lot of people who have been members of the ICA for a long time love have been the incredible art trips that Kathy was leading and Lisa was working on. And though we can't travel now, we're thinking about some kind of virtual travel possibilities that I'm kind of excited about too.
Yeah.
So check out our evolving website to stay tuned for that to think
Yeah,
about.
we're keeping it fresh. Keeping
Oh,
it
the auction.
membership is still going.
We have a question about the auction, which I think we should definitely talk about. Yeah. So the ICA, I know the auction is this beloved part of the experience of being part of the ICA community. It's an opportunity for artists. It's an opportunity for social gathering. It's an amazing way for collectors to kind of build, which is deeply important for artists as well. Of course, it's a really important fundraiser for us. It's an enormously important part of our operating budget. So here's where we are for the moment with our auction. So normally it's a live and silent auction that happens in person in the fall. We are postponing the auction to the spring. I can say that. Stay tuned for an actual date. We're doing that in part to give ourselves a little bit of a longer runway, given all of the transition we are experiencing right now, with me just having come on, Kathy just having retired, the museum being closed, the ICA being closed for the moment. My sense is that even in the spring, it's going to have to be a virtual auction of some kind. So we are looking at all the incredibly successful fundraising auctions that have been happening around us in the Bay Area, Headlands and Southern Exposure and MOAD, for example. I know the San Jose Museum of Art is about to do a virtual auction, and it looks amazing what they have on offer. So give us a little time. We are committed to having an auction. We're committed to building a really wonderful selection of work and educating our viewers and our audience and potential buyers about that work, and using it again as a way to extend, you know, our role in teaching and offering great art. So yes, there will be an auction, and it will happen in the spring. And
it will be amazing.
And it will be amazing. And we're
really taking the time to like be thorough about what we do and make sure we do it right in a way that people actually enjoy and artists feel supported. And I think that's just a really great vision for us, and focusing on that with the auction too.
Oh, I just saw a good question about, are we in conversation with other like peer organizations around the country? And the answer is, of course, yes. And that is something that I think is going to be even really interesting for us moving forward to see kind of who do we see as our peers. Of course, there are so many great non-collecting and collecting contemporary art ICAs, the ICA LA, the ICA Boston, the MCA Denver, some of those do, Boston has a collection, other great Kunsthalles. Yes, we are in conversation in multiple ways, in the sense that we both have great colleagues and peers that we talk to for, you know, support and idea generation. We're partnering, we hope very soon, with some of those institutions to borrow some shows and potentially even send our shows there, which expands our network. Anything that we borrow, of course, will kind of rework for the space of the ICA, and Christine will have real curatorial authorship as well, but partnering with other great curators so that the network of contemporary art institutions is benefiting all of us, right? So that it isn't this kind of siloed idea that we're each doing our own thing and almost competing, but rather that more minds, more resources, more opportunities are beneficial for everyone. So yes, those partnerships are really, really important as a way to think about, you know, best practices, who's doing something that might really work well for us, what might we do that they could learn from. That's my favorite thing about this field, frankly, because we have all these kind of amazing friends and colleagues and artists. So yeah, those networks feel incredibly important to me.
Yeah, and we can learn so much from them. Definitely keep an eye on our upcoming programs. We will have some PSA convos with other curators and museum directors talking about our relationship and the future of museums really broadly, and some more deeper talking art panels around it too. So definitely more of that conversation coming. I did see someone ask about portfolio reviews virtually. I have been thinking about that. It's definitely, the portfolio reviews are a great program that we do, and I will get back to you on that. We will think on if, and I'd love to get feedback from you, Todd, if you want to email me, and if you think a virtual portfolio review would be helpful. So yeah.
Yeah, I think it's so hard, right? As I said, because we were already in this moment of transition, you know, I've been moving across the country. We can't see each other in person. The ICA is not open. So we're sort of having this moment of having to rethink a way forward with everything. But that doesn't mean that the beloved things that make the ICA fall off our radar, or we won't kind of create those important opportunities for artists, for collectors, for interested art lovers, all of that.
Yeah.
It's important to us too.
All
Yeah.
right. Well, thank you everyone for joining. We filled a good 45 minutes. So
I know.
those of
Right?
you that stuck around, thank you. That was
Thanks,
great.
guys. I hope this
Yeah.
gives you a little bit of a sense of where we're going, and you understand that we're figuring it out as we go, too. But
Yeah.
I'm really
Thank you.
excited to be here. So thank you, Christine. It's fun to
Yeah.
talk to you always.
We're the ICA staff is so excited to have you on board, and like all of these conversations we've been having have been so inspiring, and I am just nothing but excited, and not just excited for like when we can reopen. I'm excited about what we're doing now,
Me too.
and that feels really good.
Yeah.
So yeah, time to get drunk now. Okay, not quite yet.
Later, like a
I
couple
like where
hours.
where your
2
head's
hours.
at, Todd. But yeah, thanks everyone. If you have any feedback, you can email us. We have our emails on the website. And just make sure to keep, if you don't follow the ICA, follow the ICA at San Jose ICA. And you can also sign up for our newsletter on our website, and that's where we'll keep you updated on all of the programs and send you reminders. So yeah, hopefully we'll see you next Friday at 3 p.m. We'll have artist Sean Hidmakronin giving us a great tour of his studio and a demo of what he's been working on. So yeah, thank you all, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you, guys. Bye. Thanks for